Are dollars just here to stay?
If you asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd probably answer to you, yeah, it is. But I feel like the way the world's moving, innovation specifically with technology and the way that we've seen the last couple of years how payment has moved, you can fail just because you're too big, and you have to keep up with the times and keep up with what actually currencies are matching with yours.
Here's a riddle, a trick question. What's the most popular thing ever manufactured in the United States? What's the most important thing made in the United States that you've ever had? I'll give you a clue. Governments and corporations want them and use them every day. Terrorists and criminals hoard them. Perfectly nice, ordinary people in every country in the world like to have a few of them around. I'm talking about the US dollar, American money, the most trusted currency in the world, the dominant currency, and one that's used in basically every interaction, essentially at the highest levels and at the lowest levels of the world economy, basically the backbone of the world economy. It costs Washington less than 10 cents to print a $100 bill. It's just paper after all. And for that paper, it gets $100 worth of gold or coal or cars. It's a pretty good deal for Washington. It's a pretty good deal in different ways for countries around the world. But still, there are people and governments who have their own ideas and their own interests that would like to wean the world off of the dollar. What do you think? Does it make sense? Do you feel comfortable knowing that you have $100 as opposed to any other kind of currency? Would you like to see Washington's role in the world economy changed? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment in the comment box. Our question is, after all, can the dollar be dethroned? Ryan Patel, I want to ask you, first of all, how useful is it? How good for everybody is it that there's a single currency that underlies most of the world's big transactions and the way the global economy works?
Well, the US dollar is where everyone looks at as a primary reserve, right? And that means stability. And you think about, regardless of whatever currency, but that's the currency we're talking about, 60% of international trade and reserves are held in the central bank. So when you think of stability, liquidity, the dollar's there, and you mentioned it, what would you rather have that's worth something that doesn't devalue the next day? And it has been the dollar. And if you even think about how much of it's ingrained in the way we do business, the way we trade, you think about nearly 90% of all foreign exchange on the dollars on one side of it in transactions. So I think you have to look at the whole picture of like, well, how did we get here? And why are we here? And why it continues to be the main trade of use of currency. And I think that's part of the reason why when you think of trade, you think about what it's valued and also the easeability of being able to get your hands on the dollar.
Now, that makes it sound like a nice neutral arrangement, but let me ask you, how much power, how much economic benefit does the United States get from the fact that everybody is using its currency?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you think about the markets, you think about investments of people externally, you say internationally wanting to put investment dollars, they would come to where? To the US. It's easier for them to come here and buy goods and sell to be able to trade for that stability. So then there's more consumers here. So it really benefits the US when it comes to that investment side. But also there's also a flip side of this. When you think of the stronger dollar of exporters who are selling to the US, but also Americans who are American companies trying to sell the other way, the dollar becomes a little more expensive. Why we see the trade deficit maybe expanding a little bit, but people buying less things. So I think I don't want to say there's a balance to that, but obviously when you have money coming into a country and coming into American companies is a good thing for the US economy, why they've been pretty resilient at the same time.
What about everybody else?
Yeah, I think when you think of other currencies, and I think you've got to break it down a little bit. Maybe you think of third world countries, you think of countries that are trying to get to grow as GDP. I think there's different needs. I think one need is, do you need stability? Do you need ability to have citizens value your currency? And I think one is that's where the dollar kind of comes in handy to be able to do it. I think the second piece, and we're starting to see this maybe with BRICS and other countries wanting to create their own currency and be able to live up to that main stage to the dollar. And I think we haven't seen anybody yet with that stability to trading to that aspect, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. I think it just needs trust to be able to do that, and ability investors wanting to make that move.
Okay, you've used a term that's not familiar to everybody, the BRICS. Who are the BRICS, and how hard are they trying to figure out a way around the dollar?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm sorry for, got Brazil, India, China, South Africa, and Russia in there. What that means is there's these part of these countries are trying to work together. They have trade, they have a trade agreement with each other, and there's more alliances when it comes to economically aspects to make it easier for them. And one of the conversations they continue to have is currency. Can they come together and trade in one currency? And let me make a point too. The countries I just mentioned, they're not the only ones. There are new countries being added that are going to go to that alliance. And so one of their main things of that group or that alliance is talking about what does one currency among that group against the dollar look like. Yes, it's still a conversation. It's not something that is any other country has moved to that degree, but this is a conversation because should the US dollar have any weakness to it, this is an alternative that this group of countries want to have.
Now, other currencies or other means of exchange have been put forward. The euro looked like it might turn into an international currency. Crypto looks to some people like a good international currency. And then there's gold. Like, why don't other efforts succeed in undermining the dollar?
That's a great, that's a great question, and actually we've seen it a lot more in the last couple of years. Like you just mentioned, the euro at one point, not to say it's not stable now, but it's very, very strong. But then when the European economy has inflation issues, just like the US, but a little bit worse, and they have crises with certain countries within the European Union, it messes with the value of the euro, and we've seen that, right? And then you think of the crypto, where the tokenization of certain of these, tokens or money value was the purpose to change the way people trade money and value. But here's the thing behind many of these things: what's backing it? What is the reserves or the aspect behind it that that the value is going to stay flat and not lose money? And I think that's where, when you think of just the dollar or just the money that you have in your pocket or in my pocket, you don't want it to lose 50% by just sitting it, as a expression goes, sitting it underneath your mattress. You want it to be able to still be valuable to the next day, to be able to buy the goods that you can still have in your daily lives.
Now, crypto is part of a broader change in the way the world uses money that I guess part of a phrase, again, people don't really use every day, which is Fintech, financial technology. How much could technology undermine the use of the dollar?
Well, I think there's two aspects. It can help and undermine, I guess, to your point. But let me take a step back first of what fintech is. You think of the way we transfer money now, right? It's very through digital. The way that we now pay for things with your phone or even with your handprint or even through via services instantly, we'd be able to move money across borders very quickly. So that means it's different from the way that you get $1 or one currency from one country to another. And why that's important is because consumers now have the ability to choose how they pay, with what currency they want to pay with, and be able to be very convenient. And that convenience piece changes the way that the trust happens as well. And I hate you keep using that word, but it can undermine the dollar to a certain degree. Should there be another currency that is very easy, trustworthy, backed, and stable, then it's no different than using the dollar, right? If you can use it to pay for the same thing and it's the same value, then you can do that. And so we haven't seen that just yet, but I think the mechanisms of financial technology is there now, where you can bank anywhere around the world and be anywhere and be able to have access to your money at any point is very, very different from 10 years ago.
That having been said, some people just trust paper money. maybe the older ones among us, a new generation is growing up with using cell phones for banking transactions. But if you're watching and you have a comment or a thought about this, about doing away with paper money, doing away with dollars, share it with us in the comment box. I'll just ask you one question, Ryan Patel. There's a phrase that's familiar to describing companies or institutions as being too big to fail. Whatever the countries of BRICS want, whatever technology and technological change is introduced, are we just, for better or worse, stuck with dollars because they are everywhere, everyone uses them, everyone accepts them, everyone basically knows the rules when you're handling dollars? Are dollars just here to stay?
That's a great point. If you asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd probably answer to you, yeah, it is. But I feel like the way the world's moving, innovation specifically with technology and the way that we've seen the last couple of years, how payment has moved, you can't be, I mean, you can fail, right? There's many variables to fail. I'm not saying there's only one, but you think of the way investment dollars change and move, how the way we trade for goods to different parts of the world, and also, other currencies and coming up, and even your economy, right? If you see some softness continuing, if anything changes with the U.S. GDP, that causes all those things to do that. I mean, I'm also laughing that you had mentioned to me about, you just mentioned about carrying paper dollars. And I probably wanted to tell you I always used to keep paper dollars on me at some point, but all my transactions, unfortunately, has forced me not to do that, not to carry it. There are businesses that do not choose to have it. They don't accept it. So guess then what happens? It changes my behavior of how I pay and what I use of the currency. And that's my point with the US dollar. It needs to evolve as well. You can fail just because you're too big, and you have to keep up with the times and keep up with what actually currencies are matching with yours.
Ryan Patel, thanks very much.